Hi, I'm Daniel, and to the people watching this video who have read the Dogman books, however many people there is, who do you think is the main character of this book series? First thought maybe the title character, and he is for the first two books, but what is there really to him? His only overarching conflict is trying to manage his dog instincts with being a police officer, but it becomes the same after a while. As the series goes on, he becomes a side plot to the real character of focus, which are Lil Petey and especially Petey, whose arc and development is what makes this series great to stick in readers' mind. If you haven't read the books, you could, but they're still quite expensive, and have a target audience for your dumb poop jokes and that type of humour. This video doesn't include spoilers, but I will explain things and try and recap this part of the books. Discuss Petey's character from the start up to the most recent of writing 10th book. Thought this video would be an issue to edit finding images, but I found a way. Let's start this analysis. Something I found out from the notes that I put at the end of the recent books is that Petey debuted in Super Dive Baby 2. However, I have not read that book, and this will be an analysis of him and Dogman. To start, the first book is the weakest as a combination of 4 stories instead of being a fully structured story. Separate parts make it more comedic one adventures instead of being overarching. There are elements in the later books, like how Dr. Scum is referred to as a new vein into whom the ball rolls, shows how the series is trying to erase it. I recommend starting on the second or third book, you're not missing much. In this, Petey is meant to act like a cartoony villain who tried to bomb a cop and his dog, which leads to the classic story where necessarily had the idea to sew the dog's head onto the cop's body. Petey accidentally created the world's best cop. As the story tells go, we may actually see him be a great cop. Some of the stories here do show potential signs of a redemption arc, because he was grateful Dogman saved him until he was handcuffed. Petey gets arrested, but will break out of prison around 10 times throughout the entire series. A lot of the chapters show him being faced with worse villains being against them, which continues in Dogman Unleashed. There is a masked villain that people think is Petey. She leads to the great line in page 66 panel 2. He breaks out of prison by faking his death by making a paper version of himself look like he'll swash, but that gets sprayed by Yiffing Gray. The thing about this book is that Petey is defeated halfway through, so the plot can deal with other villains of Yippee and Fiat Petey. His redemption arc begins some part of a starting point in the next book, A Tale of Two Kitties. But first, some context. The author of these books is Dav Pilkey, who wrote the Captain Underpants books. To bring this up in that universe, George Reed and Harold Hutchins wrote Dogman, which explains the early goofy stories. As comedy is still there as the series continues, but it is clear they begin to grow up. Begin the third book by stating they have an English teacher, Miss Chavez, who makes the cast read the all complex older books that begin to inspire the Dogman series. As well as having your title puns, this makes the book more interesting and Yaiko establishes George and Harold more. They aren't just the troublemakers that the Captain Underpants book made them seem like, but actually talented and inviting. As eventually Dogman carries the full book, the most recent has no opening by George and Harold because characters are good enough on their own. So, this book's story has Petey break out of jail and tried to make a clone, but didn't read the last instruction or wait 18 years for clone to reach adulthood. He basically had a son with little Petey, who Petey is annoyed with at first and leaves him in a free kitty box that Dogman adopts. Petey later starts throwing bad about leaving little Petey behind, starts reading the book Papa made that he wrote. He strangely has regrets, so he kidnaps him back from Dogman, but now there's a divide between both of them. Little Petey sees Dogman as a friend and hero, but Petey tries to show how bad he is, but little Petey just finds the demonstration funny. Petey is trying to teach evil and the way of the world to a kid who just wants to play, which represented in ADHD. Robot Petey built for a mech of him, but it ended up being used for a dance party instead. Final thing is when little Petey sees Dogman in trouble, he goes to save him, leading Petey chases after him saying they're supposed to be the bad guys. Little him is just a child who hasn't had the societal expectations on the world faced on him yet. Petey thought it was all bad, but for the first time ever he does something selfless. He takes his son's base in ADHD, ready for Yippee to kill him. But in the end he gets saved by the pureness and innocence of little Petey, showing kindness to Yippee, turning him good. Petey is saved by Dogman, but still gets arrested for escaping prison in chapter 3. So little Petey will have to stay with Dogman for the time being. This book gives the impression of their clashing ideologies with the two kitties. One is pure good and young, and the other is evil and the older. Different sides, they still try to have a healthy parent-son dynamic. Petey still wants little Petey to follow him, but his final message is for him to just be himself. Petey considered changing himself for little Petey, but it was just a trap for Chief. The whole story is surprisingly poetic and dramatic. So much that Dogman the Musical mostly adapts it with all great songs. It's worth getting a fan to the books. I think the song Without Me does a good job of Petey's inner thought process. Try and make it seem like caring about your Petey yourself with the decision because he is him. The song Far Better Things shows Petey's change too. The songs in this musical are very good. Next book is Fear. Not bad but not worthwhile follow-up. The biggest sin is there's no title pun. Dogman and Cat Kid is supposedly inspired by East of Eden. I don't know what that is. Why not call it Easter Eden because there's some have hot dogs in it, or Easter Feline because they're both cats. Dogman and Yellow Petey barely interact in this book. Anyway, I don't like how this is completely skippable and ignores parts of yes. If you only read this and not tell two kitties, you would miss where Petey actually cares for Little Petey. Throw away the great just be yourself line. Could argue it's Petey's real yes, but I still don't like how it's handled in this book. Here he gaslights your Petey and the figure is already you're breaking by having a criminal to help him. I have an idea of Dogman getting his own movie coming back in the 6th book. This adds nothing, it's only slightly above the 1st book. Don't worry, the 5th book, Lord of the Fleas, definitely goes up from there and changes everything. He puts on disguise to try and protect your Petey from something and he tells the story of his past. Petey's design looks like your Petey, which I think wasn't done just for laziness. Before they tell two kitties, it looked like they were very different, but this shows who Petey once was. More about the idea of innocence versus cynicism. Part of a Boy Scout group called the Critter Scout, Cognite 7 tries to say that. Petey tried to get Yoda medals and achievements there. Yoda the Fly's parody kicks in with some animals being stranded on an island, and both Punky and Bob went ravage. Turns out the whole scenario was just pretend, and when caught, the others all used Petey as a scapegoat. He scared to him being removed and using all his achievements, and it felt like his life was pointless. He got revenge on the Critter Scout by getting it shut down for cat discrimination. But his revenge leads to even more revenge plans. The therapist who was telling this was really just Piggy in disguise, he was actually a pig. Other scouts also went through the same thing of using their achievements. They now want revenge. Piggy is a great father to Petey for being so bent to avenge so many years later. It is pointless now, like it for Petey to remain the villain. Piggy in the flashback says he'll destroy what Petey loves. You're Petey interrupts the flashback by asking, wait, do you love me? This is something Petey has been denying, but he tries to change the subject by running away. The chapter title Something Dumb Happens, the villain trio named the Fleas escape written. The Petey is trying to hide in the pipes for a cool looking page. Your Petey keeps telling bad knock-knock jokes, all with a punchline involving poop. Petey starts yakking about how you can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect it to be funny. You need to avoid repetition. All about what them lines mean in a couple of seconds. Your Petey wants to save his friends, but Petey goes on about how he has bad reputation and he's just evil through and through. Then Yale Petey just says 4 words, you can change, Papa. Your Petey then starts saying you need to avoid repetition, as he was doing the same as your Petey was doing with his poop jokes. Problem was right in Petey's face, but he couldn't say it. He makes it ill to say that your Petey stops calling him Papa, showing him try to hide his parental role. He still feels he's not worthy. Piggy tries the whole join me thing, talking about that they'll be unstoppable together. Petey almost considered it before Piggy insults your Petey by calling him a dummy or kitten. His instinctual response is don't come done that way, which finally made him realize he's God. He accepted his role as Papa, later calling himself that, but he still has to return to jail. He was good for the whole book, but it still made no difference. Petey starts ranting about how life is pointless, if you're good no one cares, and the world is a rotten horrible place. This leads to your Petey's morality throughout the books, ending the conversation by saying that's why you need to be good. Starts a motif having a conversation with the two as they are walking at the end of each book. This is the best one in the series, being constantly funny and having the redemption be complex. A copy of Dogma Lord of the Fleas is a rare item worth having. Often £8 pricing is only worth it for this book and I'll probably go up by inflation. This video is already almost on the 10-minute mark. Still have half the books to go, but hopefully the rest isn't as long. Next book is Brawl of the Wild. Petey is trying to be good in prison, but thinks that he's just bad. He texts your Petey saying that he'd be better off without him, which is a sad moment. It's a relapse that makes sense of supplication, thinking he can't change. Redemption is a young process and Petey thinks it's pointless to change, but your Petey responds saying it's pointless to give up. Still, Petey tries to say goodbye and distance himself. Shows must his boy not even wanting to be bad anymore. Your side plot's happy meanwhile, like Dogman being arrested, Yowie and Sarah team up, and the Fleas plotting, but we're just going over Petey. Once again, this is a comparison made from jokes to morality, and with Petey's rant about repetition. Petey goes on a rant about improvement and growth. She eventually figures out the setup, but he already said it. This makes Peter change her heart and save the day, which leads to another goodbye at the prison, which ties into the next book. Whom the ball rolls. Last book, the shelter dogs were released from prison, but he didn't, so the cat revolution starts when his toy gets pardoned and calls it off. Now he's a free cat and makes compromise with Dogman, where your Petey is with him in the week and then with them on the weekends. Petey now has two homes, while he had none, with his father leaving him at a young age. Grandpa is found by your Petey, and they really do a great job making Grandpa hateable. He is mean to both his son and grandson as an entitled person. If you want to know why Petey and this will turn to the evil side, it's probably a primary reason. I call you made him biological, not a step-parent like usually done. Grandpa tricks him to leave for battle, so he can steal everything in the house, except your Petey's comics. Makes your Petey sad because now he's the one saying the world is horrible. The role reversed has Petey say he's glad the comic's still there, so has something to read over the weekend. Tells your Petey the world's not horrible because you're in it. Just such a great line showing Petey's no longer afraid to say stuff like that. Book ends out any speaking with Petey fixing the weeds as a metaphor for fixing and changing. He is now a good guy, but still strikes me the same personality. Cynical attitude remain, with the books keeping his dislike to Dogman and the authors. Moving on, the 8th book is titled Fetch 22. Your Petey convinces the reluctant Petey to visit Grandpa in prison, who switches Petey with Petey. More episodes 1 to style. Story shows Petey lost the old tricks the tyrants he used to have, with how even the dumb cop tricked him into the prison cell. He has improved his skills in other areas, same with Flippy the Fish. Remember him from 5 books ago, he no longer has a telekinesis powers, but with Demon is happier now. There's also Molly, the tadpole that gets into variety, and it takes courage to stand alone for what's right. That's the message of the book, with her going against the Fair Fairy, shows the power of freefall independence, with the plan for victory using smart over battle. There's also saying of a spin-off that is bad. I don't like Hacker Comic Club, and misses what's good about Dogman. I only read the first one, but I'm just going to stick to the main series. Aside from the spin-off setup, Fetch 22 is a great book. I better talk about Petey because it's overlap with many characters' arcs. We'll talk about the themes to end conversation with Petey and your Petey on a starry night that comes back. Pippi is designed to look after and teach the tadpoles, which Petey says isn't going to change the world. Well, Petey responds saying it's going to change their world. According to George and Howard's notes at the end, it was based off a story. Belle is throwing starfish back in the sea, and when someone tells her it's not going to make a difference, she responds, I made a difference to that one. Victim variety sometimes works, but it sometimes goes too high and is over-fixated on. Easy to constantly think about how it would change the world or do something overall, but doing good to some individual people is still good for them. That shouldn't be brushed off. So Petey's discussion is interesting, and how Petey says that he is right, being open to change his mind about things. We need 2 more books left, Grime and Punishment. Petey is still holding hate for Grandpa because he was mean to him and his mom, who we haven't heard from so far. The quote that this book focuses on is that hate has caused so many problems in the world, but hasn't solved one. It might be a bit hyperbolic, but the point is interesting. Yellow Petey proves love can solve problems, getting the tadpoles from Yas book to draw on the alive paper. When it comes to Grandpa, Yellow Petey tells Peter that this is his battle. He confronts Grandpa, telling him that he's done hating him. It's often confused with being fine or friendly to them, but it's not, it's just acceptance, being able to move on from the grass memories have on you. Quote Gumball, let go of the weight that won't let you live. I made a video on the Gummy episode of Parents that has a lot of similar themes. The book ends with a long walk of Peter and Yellow Petey leaving to visit Petey's mum's grave. The book series really does have complex and emotional themes, with Petey saying she's now represented in Yellow Petey. The ending guys what I like to think out. It's your story, cover it any way you want. She leads us to the most recent book that released last October, with the currently being no announced on the 11th book. It might be just a Khaki Comic Club, but also it could be the last. It's clear that part of this book series is going downhill here. I'm partial of Yas appealing Grime and Punishment because he isn't a good overarching villain as arc ended there. Dogman does very little. There's too many characters, and Lil Petey's charminess again close to being annoying. The Petey stuff remains strong enough to carry everything else. Further introduce him about redemption, and he tries to tell his story with many interruptions that I feel bad for him. His backstory with his parents is basically Hamilton. His mother told him that youth lasts forever, and it does after death. Lil Petey is meant to be similar to her, being the reason he returned good again. The part of his backstory I find noteworthy is after he first went to jail, he was only seen as a villain by everyone. He couldn't get a job, which is commentary on the idea of criminal records affecting future, which in some cases are messed up. He was shunned, which prevented growth and made him continue being a villain. Luckily, he got a chance later through his whole arc. Petey isn't a villain, but a victim of the society they live in, believing certain roles people are placed in. This is a story about the corruption of innocence, because Petey was once young like your Petey. Younger generation become more aware and can choose how to colour it. Petey young changed for good, but didn't sacrifice who he was for it. He's trying to be a good parent, but there's still scars from the past. This is inspired by a piece of old literature. This is still its own perfect redemption arc. Let me remind you, this is from kids' books with frequent poop jokes. In conclusion, these books are good for the creative concepts, comedy, and complex and poeticness when it wants to be. Which is why this video ended up being longer than I expected. I reread the whole series with an assist, so I could do a ranking if this does okay in views. You can see this video either doing really well or yo with little in between. Since it's more similar to my usual content, I'll discuss the Dreamworks film in the development of Dogman. Dreamworks isn't the best animation studio, but we trust it more because the Bad Guys VC was amazing. While all very different, the How to Train Your Dragon films are good. Most of all, Captain Underpants the first movie was an adaptation of Dav Pilkey books, and it's one of DreamWorks' best films, and combined the first 4 books. I think they'll do similar with the first 5 books. I'd imagine it will skip the first book aside from the origin. If anything, I imagine it doing what the musical did by mostly adapting its Hell to Kitties. I'm excited for this movie even though it has no set release date. Dogman just started as a Captain Underpants spin-off or became its own thing. In an amazing way. I hope you enjoyed the analysis. I won't do books often but wanted for this. Normally review films of animated shows. If that's interesting, consider watching my other videos and pressing subscribe. The end.